Hello everyone, I'm Teacher Kendall, and today I'm going to show you how to play snakes and ladders on Baamboozle. If you're not familiar with Baamboozle, you can take a look at their website, baamboozle.com, and I also made a video called What is Baamboozle, where I give you a brief description of what it is and how you can use it with your students. Now let's take a look at how to play snakes and ladders. First thing you want to do is find a game with questions to use with snakes and ladders. Of course, Baamboozle has thousands of pre-made games made by teachers just like you and me that you can search for and use to play snakes and ladders. Or, of course, you can create your own game with your own question set to use to play with your students. The great thing about snakes and ladders is that it works perfectly for all subjects, no matter what you teach. I'm an ESL teacher and I use it with my students. You could use it in math, science, social studies, any possible topic. It also works excellent with any type of questions. As you can see on Baamboozle, you can make questions with pictures, with just words, with sentences, with questions, with multiple choice. Any type of question or combination of questions can be used with snakes and ladders. For this video, I'm going to use some questions that I created when my students were learning about Christmas. So these questions are mainly vocabulary, where they have to look at a picture and just say the word, but I do have some questions with multiple choice answers for them as well. So my questions are pretty short. I don't have very many, so they will probably be repeated when I play the game, which is okay. It's great to get some extra practice with these words. So once you have chosen the game that you want to use, now it's time to open Snakes and Ladders. So I'm going to go over to Play, and then you see all the game choices with Baamboozle. Keep in mind, Snakes and Ladders is only available with Baamboozle Plus, which is their paid version, but it is well worth it. I use it with all of my students. My students love playing it, and usually the beginning of class, they ask if they can play Snakes and Ladders. It's very requested by my students, so well worth having Baamboozle Plus. So I'm going to click on Snakes and Ladders, and then you're going to see that you have 3 themes for Snakes and Ladders. Since I was teaching about Christmas, I used the Holidays edition of Snakes and Ladders. When I click on the Holiday edition, you will see everything is holiday themed. We have our characters that are holiday themed. And I have my game board that is holiday themed. I have my cute snakes and ladders. The Christmas presents are the power-ups that I'll be talking about. And it has the fun holiday music. Then we have the Halloween edition of Snakes and Ladders, which also has the super cute characters that are all Halloween themed. And then we have the cute game board with our fun snakes and ladders, our pumpkins for our power-ups. I love the dice with the eyeballs, and of course the holiday themed music. And last, we have our classic snakes and ladders that you can play with your students. And of course, any of these themes can be used at any time of year, not just Halloween or Christmas. Any holiday, any day of the week, any time of year, you can use any of these versions. And if you have any ideas of other themes that Baamboozle can add, make sure you let me know in the comments, because Baamboozle is always looking for fresh ideas to make their games more fun and more exciting for you and for your students. So let's take a look at our classic version of Snakes and Ladders. So here we have, again, our fun characters, and we have our game board. For the classic version, our ladders are the rulers, our snakes are the colored pencils, and the power-ups are the stars. Now that you have chosen the questions you want to use in your game, you've chosen the theme that you want to use, now it is time to begin playing with your students. On this main screen, you will have a few things that you need to do before you start the game. First thing I suggest doing is looking at your settings. When you see this little cog with the blue box in the top corner, this will open up your options. But don't worry, if you do forget to go in here and change any of these options, it is available to change during the game, at any time during the game. So I'm just going to go through this very quickly because I'm going to show you in more detail once we actually get into our game. So we have perfect roll to win that you can turn on or off, answer questions, snakes on, ladders on, power-ups on, full screen if you want to make it larger on your screen, music on, and sounds on. I personally often turn these off because I teach online. And sometimes my students are very quiet and it's hard to hear them. So if the music is playing, even though I love the music, when the music is playing, sometimes it can be difficult for me to hear the student when they're speaking or the student to hear me. But like I said, you can keep it on, and then if you realize it's too loud, you can always turn it off during game. And the sounds are like the sounds from the dice, the characters moving, just those little animation sounds during the game. And then we have real dice. Like I said, don't worry, I will go over these in more detail when we start the game. So let's take a look at choosing teams. So with Snakes and Ladders, you can have up to 4 teams, and you can even play with just one team if you wanted to. So if you are teaching 1v1 like I do, your student could play by themselves, or you could always play against your student. If you teach a small group with 4 students or 3 students, each student can be their own team. Or if you're teaching a large classroom full of students, you can divide your classroom into small groups, and each group can be their own team. So once you have figured out what your teams are going to be, then your teams can choose their character. So to choose your character, just click on the character that's already there, and then you have all of these options for your teams to choose from. They can choose their team, pick the picture, and then don't forget you can change the team name. For me, since I teach just individual students, I can just type the student's name here. Or if you're teaching a group of students that have group teams, then they can make up their own fun team name. So for this, I'm just going to type in student and then click OK. And then if you have a second team, you do the same thing. Click on the character. I'm going to be the cat, and I'm going to be team teacher. Okay, and if you have 3 or 4 teams, just continue doing the same thing. Now that you've changed your settings, you've chosen your team mascot and your team name, now you can start the game. But there's still 2 more things to choose from. You can play a small game or a big game. I teach, again, one-on-one, and my lessons are 25 minutes. So I have to keep my games pretty short. So I always play the small game. In the small game, we only have 24 boxes, so the game's going to go a lot faster with the small game. If you're a classroom teacher, you might have a lot of time to review and play the game, so you might want to choose the big game. So when I click on big game, you can see this one has 48 boxes, so it's going to take a little bit more time to complete one of these games. So for this video, I'm going to do the big game, and if you look at your game board, you can see I have just my snakes and my ladders. I have the student on top, they are going first, and then the teams that are waiting their turn are on the bottom. Then I have my dice that I need to use to actually start my game, and then at the top I have my menu. Remember I told you, if you forget to change those settings at the beginning, don't worry. You can click on that menu and all of those options are available. And I can change these at any time during the game. Now I'm ready to play the game with my student. To start the game, I just click on the dice. You're going to see it rolling, and then a question's going to pop up. Whenever you see the pink show button at the bottom, that lets you know that there is a multiple choice response to this. So for my students, I see if they can answer it without the multiple choice first. How many reindeer does Santa have? If they can't remember, then I can click on show and it will give them those options to choose from. So let's say the student says 9, and then either the student can click if you have a smart board that the student can come up and click on, or you can just click for them. And I'm going to click on 9 and it was correct, so I get the green OK button. I'm going to click on that and I finish rolling the dice and my character moves 1 space. Now you can see we've changed whose turn it is. I'm going to roll the dice again. This time there's no pink show button, it just says check. That means there is no multiple choice and the student has to just answer the question. Since there is no words, it's just a picture, I know they have to answer by just saying the word for the picture. These are stockings, but let's say the student got it wrong and said candy. So if they got it incorrect, you would not click OK, you would click on the Oops button. And then they don't get to complete their turn. Let's take a look again at that menu. So remember, you can change any of these options at any time. So one of the options that you can change are the snakes on or off. If I turn off the snakes just disappear from the board. Same thing if I turn off the ladders. You might think, why on earth would I want to do that? Well, it could be just a fun way to change up the game. If you play this every week with your students, it might be fun to change it up by turning on or off the different features and different options in the board game. Or to mix it up in the middle. Let's say you get to box 30 and you might say, oh, now we're going to turn off the ladders. It's just a fun way to change up the game, make it more fun, make it more interesting for your students. So I'm going to turn those back on. And now we're going to take a look at the real dice. So for the real dice, I'm going to check this. And for this one, you're still going to roll the dice on the screen first. That still starts your turn. So I'm going to click on the dice, and I still have to answer the question. If I say chimney and get it correct, I will click OK. But this time, the dice doesn't finish spinning for you. This time, you have to choose the dice number. That means you have a real dice in your classroom that you are using instead of the dice on the game board. So let's take a look at my dice. So I have one of these big squishy dice. You might have something like this, or you might have the students have a real dice on their desks. So either you or the student would roll the dice, take a look at what they got, and then you would click on the number that corresponds with that dice. So I'm going to click on the 1 because I rolled a 1, and then it will continue the game. Oh, I got to the bottom of my ladder, so now I get to climb up the ladder. All right, let's take a look at another option. Answer questions. So when I rolled the dice, the answer or the question automatically popped up. But if I turn off answer questions, I still have my real dice on. So I didn't have a question to answer. So when I turned off answer questions, you no longer have questions to answer to go and complete your turn. This would be a great way just for a quick brain break at the end of class where the students have some extra time, or a game day. I know some classes have game day at the end of the week. So it's just a fun way for your students to decompress from the day and play a fun game. So I click on my 2 and I get to move 2 spaces and climb my ladder. So no questions for the game. And of course, you can always change that at any time during the game. And then our last option are the power-ups. So for this, I'm going to keep my answer questions off. I'm going to keep my real dice on, and I'm going to turn on the power-ups. So the power-ups are there to either help the team or hurt the team. There are 4 different power-ups possible. And the power-ups in the classic version are the stars, the little circle with the stars. So when I land on one of those stars, after answering a question, if I have the questions turned on, a power-up will pop up. So let's take a look at what that looks like. If I roll a 4, I'm going to move 4 spaces, and I've landed on my first power-up. This is the Miss Turn power-up. This is probably the cutest one, my favorite out of the 4. So with this one, I'm going to, of course, miss a turn. So I'm going to click OK, and you're going to see a staple staples my character to the board, making me miss my next turn. So of course, I'm going to have my next student go do their turn. So let's say we got a 1, and I get on this power-up, and this power-up is the free roll. Does exactly what it says. I get a free roll. So I'm going to click OK. Since I have my real dice, let's say my free roll was a 1, and then I get to move 1 more spot. But look, there's my cat. I had missed my turn. So on this turn, instead of rolling, I just have the staple removed from the board, and now I know I can play my turn on the next turn. So my character, my student, gets to go again. Let's take a look at our next power-up, This is the go back. We have our little eraser that simply tells us to go back the same amount of spaces we just came. So I go back my 2 spaces. Let's take a look at our last power up. This is the jump up. We have our trampoline that's going to help our character jump up higher into the board. So when I click on this, I'm going to bounce, 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 bounce up. Wow, look, it jumped up 3 spaces and I had a ladder and I got to go up that ladder. So I went from being on number 8 all the way up to number 41. So the trampoline will bounce you up maybe 1 space, 2 space, or even 3 spaces on the board. So now you can see I'm so close to the game being over. My cat only has 2 spaces to go and my queen only has 4 spaces to go. Remember that other option I had, perfect roll to win. If I turn on perfect roll to win, that means my cat would have to roll exactly a 2. I can't get a 3, 4, 5, or 6. I would have to get a 2 to win. And my queen would have to get exactly a 4 to be able to win the game. I personally don't use this because sometimes it can take many, many rolls to get that perfect roll to win. So I don't use it, but it could be a great way just to add that extra challenge for your students. So for this, I'm going to just turn it off and I'm going to roll the dice. And if I get a 5, my cat is still going to win the game. So my cat pops up and says, "You win!" But the game isn't necessarily over yet. I can either restart a brand new Snakes and Ladders game, quit so I can choose a different game or be done for the day, or I can keep playing. The keep playing is a great option for your class. That way the other teams can feel that accomplishment of completing the game. So if I click on keep playing, now my queen gets to play again. So I'm going to roll, and let's say I get a 4. Now my queen is at the end of the game and it says, "Good job." So all the teams get to feel that accomplishment of completing the game, even if they didn't win. So I'm going to quit now. Game is over. I hope you enjoy playing Snakes and Ladders with your students as much as I love playing it with my students. And if you have any other suggestions for Baamboozle, for Snakes and Ladders, or any of their other games, let them know because they are so open to your ideas and making changes to make the games even better for you and, of course, for your students. Bye, everyone.